Back at our desk this morning, it's Congressman Buddy Carter, Georgia Republican, member of the Budget Committee. Before we get to budget and debt ceiling, though, I wanted to get your reaction this morning to the John Durham report that came out yesterday. Your thoughts on the conclusions from that 4-year investigation?
Well, I think it verifies what we had suspected, and that is that Hillary Clinton and that her allies were trying to destroy Donald Trump with lies. And I think it's something that should be taken very seriously. And, you know, we have no room for this kind of behavior in our government. And I hope that it'll be looked at. I think that, in fact, I know that Oversight and the Judiciary have already asked Mr. Durham to appear before them. So I hope we'll get to the bottom of this. We need to. It's very serious.
You mentioned Judiciary. It was the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, who put out a statement yesterday in part saying that John Durham overpromised and underdelivered after 4 years.
Yeah, you know, after reading the report, I don't think that's true. I think that what he found was significant, and obviously a lot of work went into it. And I think it certainly appears to be accurate. It certainly appears to be a valid report.
And we may hear more from John Durham, as you said, the Judiciary Committee asking him to testify. Switching gears to your work on the Budget Committee and debt ceiling in particular, what is your sense of where the conference is right now as the Speaker heads into this meeting, the second meeting in 2 weeks with the President and other congressional leaders?
Well, I remain optimistic. I remain optimistic that we're going to get something done. Look, we're going to pay our bills. We are going to keep the full faith and credit of the United States intact. There's no question about that. But there's a difference in raising the debt ceiling and raising the debt ceiling responsibly. And what we are proposing is to raise the debt ceiling responsibly. And I think that's makes a big difference. The Democrats just want to do away with the debt ceiling. I think that would be the most irresponsible thing that we could do. You know, the only time people in America really pay any attention to our debt is when we hit the debt ceiling. And then they say, oh my gosh, $32 trillion in debt, you got to be kidding me. Every American owes $90,000. The baby that was born this morning was born owing $90,000. That is unbelievable. And we've got to address that. And that's what we're trying to do. That's why 57% of all Americans polled said they agree with the limit, save, and grow plan that we Republicans have proposed.
Did we raise the debt ceiling responsibly during the Trump administration? Are we treating it differently this time than we treated it last time?
I don't think so. If you look at the spending that this administration has undertaken, it's unprecedented. Granted, we've been through a pandemic, but a lot of this spending that has taken place by this administration it was unnecessary, and that's why we are proposing in the Limit, Save, and Grow Act to reclaim some of the COVID money that hasn't been spent yet. If it hasn't been spent, it's obviously not needed. The emergency declaration is over with now, thanks to the Republicans. And we need to reclaim that money. We need to do a number of different things in order to limit our spending.
The Limit, Save, and Grow Act, the legislation that House Republicans passed at the end of last month, is that the offer to the President and congressional Democrats, or is that an opening bid?
Well, I think it's both. I think it is the offer that the majority of our conference would like to see. And in fact, I will submit to you that there were a number of members of our conference who wanted to see even more, but they are willing to accept this. But look, time is of the essence. We're running out of time here. Secretary Yellen has already said that, it does look like it's going to be June 1st. That's just a couple of weeks away. In order to get this done legislatively, we need to make some real progress very, very quickly.
Do you think there's members of your conference who are willing to go as far as default here?
There are probably some.
You're not one of them?
No. Look, we're not going to default. I don't see that happening. But it is very frustrating that this president is not willing to negotiate. Senator Biden negotiated. Vice President Biden negotiated. In fact, he was the lead negotiator. He led the negotiations in 2009, 11, and 12. And yet now he doesn't want to negotiate? I don't get that at all. Supposedly, that's what he's famous for. That is something that, he has hung his hat on.
I want to talk permitting reform too, but plenty of callers, so let me get to some of them first, and then we'll get to it. Congressman Buddy Carter, Republican of Georgia, Energy and Commerce Committee, Budget Committee, very key committees on Capitol Hill that the congressman sits on. Let you chat with him. This is Joel in Michigan, in Sault Ste. Marie, Democrat. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's just see if we could be honest here, because truly that if ex-President Trump was president now, that the Republicans would ask for an increase in the debt ceiling, and they would get it. That's just the plain truth if you're going to be honest. Now, as far as, the spending, well, we know that Trump added $8 trillion in 4 years to that, and even some of the economists, the highly educated economists did not agree with Trump's spending. Paul Krugman is one. Justin Wolvers is another. And Justin Wolvers said, well, how does Trump plan on spending this? Well, I'll tell you how. In 2018, the Republicans tried to cut the Social Security and Medicare by $1.8 trillion, which was what Trump got on his taxes.
Let me pause, Joel, there and give you a chance to jump in, Congressman.
Well, first of all, if we want to be transparent, if we want to be honest, as you suggest, and I agree with you, I don't think we would have had this problem if Donald Trump had been president, because I don't think we would have had the spending that we've had. Yes, we did address the pandemic, as we should have, and I think that was the right thing to do. We did pass legislation that put money out there in the economy like it needed to be, but so much of the American Rescue Plan, so much of the IRA was unnecessary. It went to Green New Deal initiatives that weren't related to the pandemic at all. And that's what's got us into the mess that we're in right now. So, if we want to be honest, the honest truth is that I don't think that we would have spent as much money as has been spent by this administration.
Take you home to the Peach State. This is David in Dalton, Georgia. Independent. Good morning.
Yes, Congressman Carter.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know that in this negotiation, you're talking about the IRS, and in the final bill on that IRS with the 87 new agents, there's nothing in that bill that actually says that they're going to go after people that make $400 or less. It looks like that was taken out of the bill, so it looks like they'll be able to go after anybody. And it also looks like there's only about 10,000 multimillionaires that they can go after. Why do we need 87,000 IRS agents? And also, one other thing, why is all the agencies in the government now getting armed? All of them, all the agencies within the United States government now, all of them have bought all of these new ammunition and arms in the last few years. Why is that?
Well, that's a good question as far as arming IRS agents. I don't agree with that at all. But at the same time, let's keep in mind that the first thing we did in the Republican majority in this session was to suspend the hiring of those 87,000 IRS agents. And look, I know you find it hard to believe, but those 87,000 IRS agents, they were not proposed to be hired to make sure that you get your refund quicker. That's not the reason that they were to be hired. And, we've heard this president say, oh, those people making under $400,000, they're not going to be targeted. Well, they have been, unlike what this president says. But, yes, it is in there to suspend the hiring of these agents. We certainly want to be responsible and make sure that the department gets what they need. But 87,000 IRS agents, that's exorbitant, and I think it's unnecessary, no question about that.
From the Peach State to the Garden State, this is Josephine in New Jersey, Independent. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Carter, I hear you make statements. It's very upsetting. One of the proposals that you people passed, part of the package as the blackmail, is to dramatically cut Medicaid. That's the welfare for those seniors who are in nursing homes. So why explain why they have to be at the brunt, at the end of this, because you want to blackmail to get that package passed? You know damn well that passing it has nothing to do with the future spending. You should all be doing that in committee. It's always there so we can watch you, and I watch you because you are point blank an inveterate liar.
Josephine.
Well, first of all, we have not proposed to cut Medicaid to nursing home patients. Look, I was a consultant pharmacist in nursing homes. I know nursing homes like the back of my hands, and I spent years consulting there, and I certainly want to take care and work diligently as a member of Congress to make sure that they're taken care of. We have not proposed to do away with Medicaid. Medicaid does need to get back to its original intent, and that is to make sure that those in our society, the least in our society, are able to get the care that they need. The aged, the blind, disabled, that's what Medicaid was intended to be. But it is mushroomed into something much more than that, something that was never intended to be. And yes, it needs to be held accountable. The states need to be held accountable as to what they're doing with Medicaid, and we need to make sure that we've got it under control and get it back to its original intent to take care of those that most need it in our society.
Can I draw on your work as a pharmacy owner and pharmacist?
Sure.
There was a hearing last week, we aired it on C-SPAN, on insulin pricing.
Yes.
And they had the pharmaceutical companies, the heads of those companies, come and testify. And then there was the pharmacy benefit managers, and there was a lot of finger pointing about who's to blame for insulin prices. Who's to blame for high insulin prices?
Well, first of all, there's enough blame to go around for everyone. But as you, I suspect, know, and most people know, I am not a fan of PBMs at all. Pharmacy benefit managers are middlemen. They bring.
You dealt with these folks, correct?
I did as a pharmacist. I had my own business for over 32 years. I practiced pharmacy for over 40 years. I started when I was 10. But nevertheless, it was, they do not bring any value whatsoever to the healthcare system. And all they're doing is just increasing prices. Now, the pharmaceutical manufacturers need to do a better job. I acknowledge that. However, the pharmacy benefit managers are, as the Attorney General in Ohio stated, they're nothing more than gangsters. They are gangsters. They are ripping off the public. And that's why the first thing I did when I became a member of Congress 8 years ago was to go to the FTC and ask them to look at the vertical integration that exists in the drug pricing chain right now, where you have the insurance company that owns the PBM, that owns the pharmacy, and now, in a lot of cases, employs the provider. That's the vertical integration. This is a monopoly. Where is Teddy Roosevelt when you need him? And finally, after 7.5 years, last summer, the FTC agreed to undertake a study of the egregious practices of the PBMs and the impact that they are having on independent retail pharmacies. Keep in mind, all of us want the same thing for health care. We want accessibility, affordability, and quality. Now, 95% of all Americans live within 5 miles of a pharmacy. It's the most accessible healthcare professional in America. If we allow PBMs to continue to put pharmacies out of business, and they are doing that at a rate of 4% every year, then we're going to decrease accessibility.
How are they putting them out of business? Just explain that part.
What they're doing is that they are getting bids from the pharmaceutical manufacturer, and they are paying one price for it and charging another price for it and then pocketing the difference. Now, the PBM's nothing more than an insurance company. The insurance company will argue, well, we're using it to keep our premiums low. I don't know about you, but my premiums haven't gone down. They certainly haven't, and they're not going to go down. But they're in many cases, that's what is known as spread pricing is what they're doing. They also have the egregious practice of DIR fees, direct and indirect remuneration, where they go back and claw back what they paid to the pharmacies, which is just killing pharmacies. That is something that has to be addressed. And thank goodness the FTC is finally looking into this.
I know this is a passion of yours. Glad we had a
It
chance
is.
to talk about it. This is Julie in Rhode Island, a Republican. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the call. I've been so frustrated in the past, just a little over 2 years, with all of the spending that this administration is doing and all of the things that they have not taken notice to take care of, like sending all of our money to Ukraine, not closing our border, throwing our people out of hotels, and such, and all of this stuff that's going on with Biden and the Biden family, all that money, is anybody ever going to have to pay the price for any of this, Mr. Carter? I know I love your work. I love what you do. I love who you are. I am paying double on my insurance. I'm back to work. I'm a retired person. I had to go back to work because of the economy right now. Is there any light at the end of this tunnel for us?
Yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and please don't ever give up. Look, we live in the greatest country in the world. You hear about people trying to break into this country, but you don't hear about anybody trying to break out. I know times are tough right now, and yes, the spending is out of control. That's why we have a debt ceiling. That's why what is going on right now is so vitally important. We have to get the spending under control. This is killing people. I would submit to you right now that what's going on in our economy is self-inflicted. That this administration, day one, declared war on fossil fuels, resulting in increased gasoline prices, resulting in increased inflation, resulting in increase in interest rates, resulting in the mess that we have right now. Now, look, I love the environment. I have the honor and privilege of representing the entire coast of Georgia. 100 miles of pristine coastline. It's my home. It's where I've lived all my life, where I intend to live the rest of my life. And I love the coast. I love the environment, just like everyone does. And I want to protect it. But this rush to green that we have experienced by the far left of the Democratic Party has cost us enormously. And I've witnessed it as a member of the Conservative Climate Caucus. I traveled to Europe last year, and I saw firsthand the mistakes that they've made over there, where they have allowed their policies to get ahead of their innovation, resulting in they closed down their nuclear plants. And all of a sudden, now they've had to go back to using coal. They let their policies get ahead of their innovation. We should learn an important lesson here in America by what they've done wrong.
We're hearing that a permitting reform deal might be part of these negotiations with the White House over the debt ceiling. What does a deal need to include on permitting reform for you to support it?
It needs to include, it needs to be streamlined. Look, I want to give you an example, and I believe that this is apples to apples. As I mentioned, I represent the coast of Georgia. We had one of the biggest economic development projects in our history was the deepening of the Savannah Harbor, the Savannah Harbor Expansion Project. We went from 42 feet deep to 47 feet deep in order to accommodate the post-Panamanic ships, the bigger ships that are coming in. We just finished that deepening project last March of 2022. The permitting for that project started in 1996. Unbelievable. 1996.
When did the digging actually start taking place?
The digging started taking place later, yes. But the permitting started taking place in 1996. In that period of time, China has started and completed 3 ports. The permitting is killing us. Every day we get calls in our office from developers who are concerned about the permitting process. We've got to streamline this. This is something that President Trump understood as a businessman, and he tried to address. This administration has taken us right back to where we were before the last administration.
Why didn't it happen during the Trump administration?
Well, it did to a certain extent, and it would have happened more if he'd had more time, and I hope that when we get more Republicans back into the White House and we get more Republican control, this will be something that we address. And yes, it needs to be part of the debt ceiling negotiations. It's a vital part of it, I will tell you that.
I should ask, is there a particular Republican that you are supporting for the Republican nomination?
Obviously, I'll be supporting the Republican. This is about policy. This is, and we are right on policy.
You have not endorsed former President Trump?
I've supported President Trump, and if he's our nominee, then certainly I'm going to be supporting him, and I think he'll be a great nominee.
To Jill, Woodward, Iowa, Democrat. Good morning.
Yes, I was wondering if you can tell me what percentage of our national debt Trump was responsible for. I know that I know, but do you know?
What's your number, Jill?
25%. I believe he was only president for like 1% of all of our country's time. Like if you look at time of presidency versus amount of debt incurred, he was president for a little over 1% of the time, but incurred 25% of the debt.
And the current U.S. national debt, $31 trillion. $785 billion, $674 million and counting. As you pointed out, that comes out to about $95,000 per citizen of this country.
It does. It does. Look, yes, we did incur a lot of debt during the Trump administration. There's no question about that. But keep in mind that we were addressing the pandemic back then, too. That accounted for a lot of it. Look, you will not find very many more fiscal conservatives than me in Congress. I don't have any debt, and I haven't had any debt, any personal debt, since 1994. And I've made certain of that. But you know, look, I understand that. I understand that it's necessary. But at the same time, we have got to stop this. We are headed for disaster if we don't address this as a country. This is something that, you know, we in the Republican Party have identified the three greatest challenges of our country as being China, our debt, and education. And our debt is really something that has got to be addressed. That's why what's going on right now, and I hear people say, "Oh, I'm not interested in the debt negotiations. Y'all gonna pay the bills," and we are going to pay the bills. We're going to keep the full credit and faith of the United States. But at the same time, now's the time for us to get spending constraints in line. Now's the time for us to do that and negotiate.
What do you say to Democrats who say, Republicans always say now is the time when there's a Democrat in the White House? Why can't it be when there's a Republican in the White House?
It should be when a Republican. It should be regardless of who's in the White House. We've got to get it under control. And that brings up another concern that is a big concern of mine, and that is the power that we have conceded over a period of time in the legislative branch to the executive branch. And that's why part of the negotiations, part of the debt ceiling of the Limit, Save, and Grow Act is the REINS Act. Because, you know, we've almost
Remind us what the REINS Act does.
The REINS Act says that any president who issues an executive order that exceeds $100 million, that it has to go through Congress. And that's good, because over a period of time, and it's not just recently, I mean, it's been over a period of time, we in the legislative branch have conceded too much authority to the executive branch. It's almost become a monarchy now where the executive branch is running the country and the legislative branch is not doing anything at all. We have the power of the purse. Our forefathers set our government up so that the power of the purse lies with Congress, with the legislative branch. Over a period of time, we have conceded that. And whether it's a Republican or whether it's a Democrat or independent in the executive branch, we need to seize that power back in the legislative branch.
The REINS Act, Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny Act, and
yes,
it's been a long-time priority of some members of Congress. Why can't this get through Congress?
Well, right now we've got we've got a Democratic-controlled Senate, and we've passed it. It's part of the Limit, Save, and Grow Act. So, and this week the Senate is taking up that. I hope that they will pass it too. Then it will go to the president's desk, and hopefully he'll sign it.
Lanesville, Indiana. This is Ray, a Republican. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm wanting to ask the Buddy Carter. He's talking about pharmacy and pharmaceuticals. Has been in the business. My question is, how many people are in line to make money off of any prescription that the average person gets from the pharmacy?
Good question. Most of the time, it's just the insurance company. I can assure you the pharmacist is not making that much, and in many cases, they're actually losing money. That's why you see so many independent pharmacies going out of business now. That's why that's why we need transparency. Look, if a PBM is getting a rebate from a pharmaceutical manufacturer, then that should go to the patient. It shouldn't go back to the PBM, aka the insurance company. It should be passed to the patient, but the patient's not getting it. That's where the problem is in the transparency. You know, sunlight is the transparency is the greatest disinfectant out there. And sunlight really helps when we can look and see what's going on there. And they want to claim all this, this is business secrets. That's baloney.
Emmanuel is in Michigan. We've got about 5 minutes left with Congressman Buddy Carter. Emmanuel, a Democrat for you. Good morning.
Good morning. Congressman, I just have one question for you, and the question is about the Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, the language is the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law being the budget, including debt incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for service and suppression of insurrection or rebellion shall not be questioned. Sir, it looks like you guys are questioning that. So you are breaking the law. You're violating the 14th Amendment. Could you explain to me how you're not doing that with this whole contrived debt issue right now?
Look, the Limit, Save, and Grow Act raises the debt limit. It raises it by $1.5 trillion or until March 31st of 2024, whichever comes first. We are trying to raise it responsibly. Now, as far as the 14th Amendment goes, if the president decides to enact that, then it's going to be up to the Supreme Court to make that determination of whether it's relevant or not. But we have proposed to raise the debt limit. That's what people don't understand. The Limit, Save, and Grow Act is the only proposal, to my knowledge, that's out there on the table right now to raise the debt limit. We want to raise it, but we want to raise it responsibly. That's the key here.
I'll try to give you one more call this morning.
Sure.
Wayne City, Illinois. This is Carla, a Republican. You're on with Congressman Buddy Carter.
Good morning, Buddy. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I just have a couple of questions. I had one about the pharmaceutical companies. Now, I just had injections done in my knees. I'm on Social Security. I have bad knees. I have a bunch of medical issues. It cost me over $700 just to have these 2 injections done in my knees. And that's out of my pocket. That's not, they charged me like $1,200. Right. So that's ridiculous for 2 injections. And then I have another issue with the government, with the border. And I always say that if you can't get something done, I think it's time to get the person out that ain't doing their job. So is that something that you guys are looking into? Are you guys planning on doing something about the impeachments of like Mayorkas and
Absolutely.
Ray?
I would vote for that in a heartbeat. He is pitiful. He is doing a disservice to our country. He ought to resign. I have no respect whatsoever for the work that he is doing down there, or for the work that he's not doing down there at the border. The border is a mess, and it's much more than just the 5 million people who have come across that border illegally. It's much more than just the million people, the million gotaways who have gone across that border. It's the illegal drugs coming across that border, the fentanyl that's coming across that border, enough to kill 13 billion people. And right now in America, there's a twofold problem with fentanyl right now. First of all, we've got to stop the flow of fentanyl at that border, and you can only do that if you secure the border. Secondly, we've got to address the situation that exists with the fentanyl that is in our country right now. That's why I applaud the FDA. I sent them a letter at the first of this year asking them to take off all the barriers to people being able to get naloxone, which can reverse the effects of fentanyl. And to their credit, they did that. Now you can get it without a prescription. You can get it over the counter and at your local drugstore. And that is good, and I applaud the FDA for that. I'm often critical of them with good reason, but in this case, I do applaud them. That's important. Naloxone should be just like syrup of Ipecac. It should be in every medicine cabinet in America. Wherever you see a defibrillator, you ought to see naloxone. If used soon enough and quickly enough, it can reverse the effects of the fentanyl. So the twofold problem we've got is that we've got to stop the flow of fentanyl into this country, and we've got to address the amount of fentanyl in this country right now, enough to kill 1.3 billion people in this country right now.
Congressman, we'll have to end it there. I know you have a Republican conference meeting you got to get to this morning, but do always appreciate the time. Congressman Buddy Carter, Republican of Georgia, Budget Committee, Energy and Commerce Committee, and if you want to follow him on Twitter, at Rep. Buddy Carter. Thanks.
Thank you.
Up next, another perspective from another